The city of Neo-Tokyo buzzed with life. On a warm Tuesday morning in 2045, tall buildings reached for the sky, their windows flashing with moving pictures. At the heart of the city stood the Quiral Station, home to the world's most advanced train. Dr. Akira Tanaka walked onto the platform, his eyes fixed on the shiny silver train. At 45, Akira was the genius behind the Q-rail. This train could jump vast distances in the blink of an eye, using something called quantum tunneling. As Akira stepped into car number 7, he thought about the big speech he would give later that day in New San Francisco. He barely noticed the other people getting on the train, each lost in their own thoughts. Among the 50 passengers were 2 special people. Zoe Chen, a young woman with bright green hair, sat down and started working on her computer. She was getting ready to give a talk about saving the Earth from climate change. A few rows behind her, Marcus Rodriguez, a former soldier with a metal arm, sat quietly. He was thinking about his next job helping people in areas hit by long droughts. A computer voice spoke up. "Welcome to Q, Rail Flight 219 to New San Francisco. We will make our quantum jump in 30 seconds. Please turn off all your devices to avoid feeling dizzy." Akira closed his eyes, feeling excited. He always loved the moment when the train made its quantum jump. The train hummed louder as it got ready to leap through space. But something went wrong. Akira's eyes snapped open. The numbers on his special device were jumping around wildly. Before he could do anything, a bright flash filled the train car. Everyone felt like they were floating. At that same moment, far away in space, the sun burped out a huge flare. It sent a wave of tiny particles racing towards Earth at super high speed. When these particles hit the Earth's magnetic field, they caused big problems with anything that used electricity. Inside the Q rail, people screamed as everything seemed to twist around them. Akira felt like he was being stretched and squished at the same time. Then, suddenly, it all stopped. The train slammed to a halt with a loud crunch. For a moment, nobody made a sound. Then the air filled with confused and scared voices. Akira shook his head, trying to clear his mind. As he looked around, he realized something had gone terribly wrong. The inside of the train car looked beat up. The windows, which usually showed a blur as they quantum jumped, now showed thick, strange-looking plants. The train was halfway buried in mud, with vines growing over it. As people started to wake up and ask questions, Akira's scientific brain tried to figure out what had happened. He pulled out his special device and gasped at what it showed. According to the device, they hadn't just moved through space. They had traveled through time. Akira stood up, his legs shaky. "Everyone," he said, his voice loud enough to be heard over the panic. "Please try to stay calm. I know this is scary, but we need to work together to figure out what's happened." Zoe, recognizing Akira from Science magazine, spoke up. "Dr. Tanaka, what's going on? Where are we?" Akira took a deep breath. "Based on what my device is telling me, it looks like we've traveled through time. I can't be sure, but I think we've jumped about 100 years into the future." The train car went quiet. Then people started crying and asking more questions. Marcus stood up, his military training kicking in. "All right, folks. I know this is a shock, but right now we need to focus on staying safe. We don't know what's out there, so we need to work together and be careful." Over the next few hours, Akira, Zoe, and Marcus helped organize the passengers. They split into teams to check their supplies, look around outside, and try to fix the damaged train car. As people calmed down, they started to notice more about their strange new surroundings. The plants outside were like nothing they had ever seen before. The air felt heavy and damp, and it smelled different. Zoe led a small team to look around. When they came back, she had bad news. The plants out there have changed a lot. They look like they've had to adapt to big climate changes. She paused, looking worried. And we found something else. About a kilometer east, we found the ruins of what I think used to be Neo-Tokyo. It's almost completely covered by the jungle. Everyone looked scared when they heard this. Akira, who had been trying to fix some equipment from the train, felt sick to his stomach. Whatever had happened in the 100 years they'd skipped must have been really bad. As night fell, the group sat around campfires they had made. They could hear strange animal noises in the darkness around them. Akira found himself sitting with Zoe and Marcus. The three of them had naturally started working together to keep the group safe. "We need to find out what happened," Zoe said quietly. "If we're going to survive here, we need to understand what kind of world we've landed in." Marcus nodded, the firelight glinting off his metal arm. "You're right. But we also need to think about how we're going to live here long term. We don't have many supplies, and we don't know what dangers are out there." Akira listened to them talk, his mind racing. "There might be a way back," he said suddenly. Zoe and Marcus looked at him in surprise. "The quantum engine is damaged, but I might be able to fix it. If I can get it working again, there's a chance we could go back to our own time." The three of them looked at each other, feeling a glimmer of hope. But as they looked around at the scared faces of the other passengers, they knew that hope alone wouldn't be enough. They needed a plan. The next few days were busy. Akira worked hard on the quantum engine, while Zoe and Marcus led teams to explore and find food and water. On one of these trips, they made an amazing discovery. Marcus led a team further into the ruins of Neo-Tokyo than they had gone before. As they carefully walked through fallen buildings and over roads split by huge tree roots, they found a building that was still standing. It's the Global Archives," one of the team members said in surprise. He recognized the special design of the building, even though it was old and falling apart. The Global Archives had been the biggest library in the world, holding both physical and digital records of human history and science. If any place could tell them what had happened to the world, it would be here. Inside, they found hallways lined with moldy books and broken data crystals. But deep inside the building, they found a sealed vault. Its special lock had kept it safe all these years. It took them hours to open the vault, using Marcus's military hacking skills, and a lot of hard work. When the doors finally opened, they found a treasure trove of information that had been protected from time. Back at the camp, Akira, Zoe, and Marcus studied the information they had found. They pieced together the sad history of the 100 years they had missed. The story that emerged was one of big disasters and desperate attempts to save the world. It had all started with the climate crisis that Zoe had been fighting against in their own time. As temperatures rose and weather got more extreme, governments tried more and more desperate things to fix it. They started huge projects to try to cool the planet, but these had unexpected and bad results. They released chemicals into the sky to reflect sunlight, which seemed to work at first, but it messed up rain patterns, leading to widespread droughts and food shortages. When they tried to remove carbon dioxide from the air, it caused huge algae blooms that choked the oceans, killing most sea life. As society was about to collapse, they made one last attempt to control the weather using mirrors in space. In 2078, something went wrong with the mirrors. They focused intense sunlight on several major cities, destroying them instantly and causing a chain of natural disasters. What happened next was swift and terrible. Billions of people died in the initial disasters, and millions more in the years of famine and conflict that followed. The survivors, faced with a world that was becoming harder and harder to live in, went underground. They built huge cities beneath the surface to wait out the chaos above. As Akira, Zoe, and Marcus shared this grim history with the rest of the group, everyone fell silent. The world they had known was gone, replaced by this harsh, alien future. "There's more," Zoe said softly, her voice shaky with emotion. According to the last records in the archive, the underground cities were having their own problems. They were running out of resources, and their life support systems were failing. The last entry was a call for help, begging anyone who might be listening to come save them. Everyone understood what this meant. They might be the last humans left on the surface of the earth. As night fell, heated discussions broke out around the campfires. Some people wanted to focus all their efforts on fixing the quantum engine. They were desperate to return to their own time and stop this future from happening. Others, shaken by what they'd learned, felt they had a duty to this time. They argued that they should look for any survivors and try to help rebuild. Akira, Zoe, and Marcus found themselves at the center of the debate. Each of them was pulled in different directions by their own knowledge and beliefs. "We have a chance to change everything," Akira argued, his eyes bright with possibility. "If we can get back, we can warn the world and stop these disasters before they happen." Zoe shook her head, looking pained. "But what about the people here, now? If there are survivors in those underground cities, they need our help. We have knowledge and skills that could be crucial to rebuilding." Marcus, always practical, added, "And we don't even know if going back is possible, or what effect it might have. We could make things worse." As they argued, something new happened. Strange noises began to come from the jungle around them, unlike anything they'd heard before. The people watching the edges of their camp reported seeing large, shadowy figures moving just out of sight. Whatever decision they were going to make, they would have to make it soon. This strange new world was no longer going to let them sit and think. The future, it seemed, was coming to meet them, whether they were ready or not. Just as the group was reaching a breaking point, something unexpected happened. A young woman stumbled into their camp one morning, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. "I'm Arya," she said, her voice rough as if she wasn't used to talking. "I'm from Sanctuary Deep, one of the underground cities. We picked up strange energy readings from the surface. I never thought we'd find other people up here." Arya's arrival changed everything. She confirmed that there were indeed survivors living in huge underground complexes. But the news she brought was bad. They were running out of resources, and the carefully maintained ecosystems that kept them alive were close to collapsing. Her people had sent her as part of a last attempt to find help or resources on the surface. As Arya shared her story and learned where the time travelers came from, the camp buzzed with renewed purpose and debate. They now faced a difficult moral choice that split the group in two. One group, led by Akira, argued passionately for returning to the past. "With what we know now, we can prevent all of this from happening," he insisted. "We can save billions of lives, preserve our world." The other group, rallying behind Zoe and Arya, felt a deep responsibility to the people of this time. "These people need us now," Zoe countered. "We have the knowledge and skills to help them rebuild, to reclaim the surface. We can't abandon them." Marcus found himself torn between the two positions. His military background urged him to complete the mission, in this case, returning to their own time. But his humanitarian work had taught him the value of helping those in immediate need. As the debate raged on, Akira made a breakthrough with the quantum engine. "I think I've found a way to create a temporary time bridge," he announced one evening. "But there's a problem. The process is unstable and probably only works one way. Once we turn it on, we'll have only one chance to go through, and only about half of us can make the journey before the bridge collapses." This news brought all the tension to a boiling point. The choice was now clear: return to the past and try to prevent the catastrophe, or stay in this grim future and help the survivors rebuild. The camp was divided, with passionate arguments on both sides. Families were split, with parents and children finding themselves disagreeing. The air felt electric with tension as they called for a vote to decide their fate. In the end, they decided to split the group. Half would return to the past, armed with their knowledge of the future and determined to prevent the coming disasters. The other half, including Zoe and Marcus, would stay behind to help Aria's people and work towards reclaiming the surface world. Akira, after much soul-searching, decided to return to the past. "I created the Q-rail," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I'm partly responsible for bringing us here. I have to go back and make sure this future never happens." As the day of departure approached, the camp was busy with activity. Those returning to the past were told everything they needed to know about the key events they needed to prevent. Plans were made, goodbyes were said, and many tears were shed. On the morning of the time jump, the two groups stood facing each other, the repaired quantum engine humming ominously between them. Akira, his face set with determination, prepared to lead his group back to 2045. "Remember," he said, speaking to both groups, "whether we're fighting to prevent this future or working to improve it, we're all striving for the same goal, a better world for humanity." With a final nod to Zoe and Marcus, Akira turned on the quantum engine. A shimmering portal of energy burst into existence, its surface rippling like liquid starlight. One by one, Akira's group stepped through, disappearing in flashes of bright light. As the last traveler disappeared, the portal collapsed with a thunderous boom, leaving behind a scorched patch of earth and a lingering smell of ozone. Zoe, Marcus, and the others who had chosen to stay turned to face Aria, their expressions a mix of determination and worry. "Well," Marcus said, managing a small smile, "I guess it's time to start rebuilding the world." As they prepared to journey to Sanctuary Deep, none of them could shake the feeling that this was not the end of their story, but just the beginning of a new chapter. The Quantum Shift Chronicles, it seemed, were far from over. In twin flashes of light separated by 100 years, both groups stepped into uncertain futures. Those returning to 2045 arrived mere hours after they had left, their minds heavy with the knowledge of a future they desperately hoped to change. In 2145, the remaining time travelers began their journey to the underground city, bringing with them hope for a new beginning. As the quantum energies faded away, both groups faced unknown challenges ahead. They were linked across time by their shared experience and a common goal: to forge a better path for humanity, whether by preventing disaster or rising from its ashes. The adventure, it seemed, had only just begun.